Guys, welcome in. This is going to be my instant reaction for the AP Top 25 poll that was just released this week. We've got Penn State moving up, Washington also making their debut here for 2022 inside the top 25, and then a few things that I didn't agree with, but every week I do this, we go segment by segment, and I think we can all agree the number one tier here for college football is Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Those are the first three teams, although Georgia is now sporting a death grip of that number one overall spot, receiving 59 first place votes, Alabama with just 3. The biggest thing that boosted Georgia's resume had nothing to do with Georgia this week. You had Oregon destroying BYU. Of course, Georgia destroys Oregon in week 1, and now you've got Georgia who gets boosted up even more. They are the number one team and have by a lot with Alabama at 2, and Ohio State slightly behind at 3. Alabama covering the spread against UL Monroe. Still issues with the receivers. Their leading receiver was a running back. And then Ohio State at number 3. They're looking better and better on offense. They do have some cornerback concerns, but that team has a ton of weapons. JSN is back. Julian Fleming is back. Those are the top 3 teams. Next, we've got Michigan. They have I believe, the lowest strength of schedule in all of college football right now. They are 3-0. They will face somebody this week, Maryland at home. Coming in at number 5, Clemson. I think Clemson is a complete placeholder. They have not looked good. In my opinion, they need to make a quarterback change. That is a broken program right now. I think they ended up winning 48-20 over Louisiana Tech. But that was a game. It was close in the third quarter. Last week, they got outgained by an FCS team. It's bad for Clemson. Oklahoma at number 6. Phenomenal win over Nebraska. Of course, people wondering what was going to happen with Nebraska, the new coach. Oklahoma, after the first touchdown by Nebraska to go up 7-0, just an absolute annihilation. They run the ball out in the fourth quarter. They could have scored 60+. That's a big win. I'm not going to overreact to it, though. USC at number 7. Guys, I think USC has had a very favorable, manageable schedule. A Fresno State team that, in my opinion, was overrated a little bit by the general public. I don't think Fresno State is a walkover, but they're not this, potential top 25 team that people think they are. And then week 2, you had the Stanford game on the road, and you can just completely out-athlete Stanford. So I think with USC, their season is really going to come down to that game at Utah. And we will see how they do in that one. Kentucky moves up to number 8. I was not impressed. I do not think Kentucky's the number 8 team in college football. They struggled with Youngstown State. I understand you could say, well, they didn't get up for the game, whatever. I mean, come on. You can't struggle with FCS teams. Your quarterback's throwing 2 interceptions. I know the excuse. They're going to get their starting running back in October. We'll see with Kentucky. Oklahoma, I don't know why Oklahoma State moved down, but they're down to number 9. They crushed Arkansas Pine Bluff. Arkansas at number 10, shocking. I thought for sure Arkansas was due to move down significantly. If you don't know the backstory here, Arkansas was losing to Missouri State, an FCS program, by 10 points in the fourth quarter, and somehow they're a top 10 team. I do not understand it, but they remain inside the top 10. Moving 11 through 17, you've got Tennessee, who was rewarded for their win over Bowling Green. I'm just kidding, but they did move up 4 spots after beating Bowling Green. They've got a big game this week, I think at home against Florida, and game day's going there apparently. So Tennessee up to number 11. I think that's a little bit high for them, but this is early in the season. They did have a decent win over Pittsburgh. Next, we've got NC State, who is up 4 spots. NC State, they've righted the ship a little bit. They beat a decent Texas Tech team at home. We'll give them credit for that. Good defensive performance. Utah, I think Utah's a top 10 team. I understand they lost to Florida week 1. It was a close game. It was week 1. It was on the road. It was a hostile environment. They're at number 13 right now. They're going to continue to climb, in my opinion. They're way more complete than NC State. They're way more complete than Tennessee. They're way more complete than Arkansas. I understand they have a loss and Arkansas doesn't. Kentucky doesn't, but they're better. They're just, in my opinion, they're better. Penn State moving up to number 14. I think this is a great spot for them. I know a lot of people think they should move inside the top 12 or 10, but Penn State, definitely a really solid program. I was shocked when they didn't appear, inside the AP top 25 in the preseason rankings. I think at least 22nd or 23rd would have been a good spot for them, but they're at number 14. Oregon is up 10 spots, so once again, this is the major benefit to Georgia. Georgia has on their resume a 49-3 win over the number 15 team in the country. Oregon crushing BYU at home. Bo Nix, I think 5 total touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns. The first Oregon quarterback to do that since Marcus Mariota in 2014. You've got Ole Miss at number 16. I guess they got reward. I mean, listen, they did destroy Georgia Tech. I think that's more of Georgia Tech's just horrible, but they won by 42. They won 42-0, and the spread in that game was only 17. So they way overperformed Ole Miss. You want to say good defense? I think it's more Georgia Tech just has really bad offense and they're just not good. But Ole Miss moves up 4 spots. You've got Baylor at number 17. They beat an FCS team in Texas State. Washington makes their debut at number 18. Probably a pretty respectable spot for Washington. A major win over Michigan State. The game wasn't even close. I know it ended as like a 12-point victory. It was a total blowout. BYU still at number 19, so they're down 7 spots. I don't know where I would put BYU, maybe 21st or 22nd if I was doing a poll, so I don't really have an issue with that. I mean, but that was a bad loss on the road. BYU plays a really tough schedule for an independent. Florida at number 20, so the South Florida game probably at least should have went to overtime if South Florida's center knew how to snap the ball. Anthony Richardson, through 3 games, he has 0 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And we'll see, people are going to be angry that Florida is still ranked. This is all going to sort itself out. I mean, Florida is on the road at Tennessee. I guess the major issue, and this is the problem we keep running into with the SEC, if Tennessee beats Florida, technically that's a ranked win for Tennessee, and it's like move Tennessee up even more, even though, I mean, Florida's nothing to write home about. I know they beat Utah. I don't overreact to week 1 games personally, and that was a closer game. It's a tough thing. I'm concerned about Florida. I'm concerned about their passing game, but they did win, and they do have some talent. This should all work itself out with Tennessee. Again, the only issue, if Tennessee wins, people are going to want to move Tennessee inside of the top 10 because there's the Bermuda Triangle of death with the SEC. If one overrated team beats another overrated team, that team that wins gets overrated even more. That's the issue. Next, we've got Wake Forest at 21. Wake Forest, I mean, they narrowly avoided overtime. I think Wake Forest is a complete fraud. Wake Forest has a home game versus Clemson. That's the real battle of the overrateds right there. My goodness. Wake Forest, they're at 21. They cannot run the ball. That is the major issue. Texas at 22. I'm a little disappointed. I understand this really wasn't a situation of Texas moving down. It was more Washington moving up. But Texas, with the banged up quarterbacks, you're facing a decent team in UTSA, and they handled their business. We know Texas is talented. Without Quinn Ewers, it really puts a damper on that team. They still do have Bijan Robinson and Xavier Worthy. A&M is at 23 after their home win against Miami. A&M, major quarterback issues, but they do have a good defense, and we know how talented they are. I think the bigger issues for A&M is that off-the-field problems. The 3 5-star true freshmen get suspended. Next, we have Pittsburgh. They're at number 24. After their road win at Western Michigan, they covered the spread. They were like 10-point favorites. They end up winning by 21 on the road at a MAC school, I believe, with their backup quarterback. So it's kind of an impressive win for them. And then Miami at 25. I would have had Minnesota, personally. My main issue with Miami is just the lack of playmakers that surround Tyler Van Dyke, and unfortunately it reared its ugly head against A&M. The defense only allowing 17 points in college. That should be more than enough to win a football game, and just no talent surrounding Tyler Van Dyke. So I would drop Miami off. And I would move Minnesota. I understand Minnesota. They haven't faced very many, good teams. Colorado is horrifically bad. I just love their running backs. Personally, the teams that were knocked out, you've got Michigan State receiving 91 votes. So yeah, Michigan State, it's a miserable loss. They were ranked number 11, so they go from number 11 to unranked, and that's a game you have to win if you're Minnesota, if you're Michigan State, because you're in the Big Ten East. You've got a road game with Penn State. You've got a road game with Michigan. You've got Ohio State. It's miserable. I think they face Minnesota this week too at home. So you would have loved to have gotten that game, and it was an annihilation. Florida State, I'm still not buying Florida State. I know they beat Louisville. The backup quarterback came in. They won on a Friday night. Good for them. Appalachian State, they won on a Hail Mary. I would not rank them. North Carolina, 72 votes. North Carolina has a really bad defense. Good for Washington State. Yes, the huge win. Actually, guys, I'll be honest. I probably would rank Wisconsin. I know they lost to Washington State, but I still think they're a top 25 team. Washington State, though, you get the big win over Wisconsin, and there's no letdown, although Colorado State is horrific. They beat Colorado State 38-7. Cincinnati, I would have no problem ranking. Cincinnati, I think they had a weird neutral site game with Miami of Ohio. They end up winning by 21. Oregon State, I believe, beat Montana State, an FCS program, by like 40. Good for the Oregon State's 3-0 on the year. They have 2 decent wins. I think they beat Fresno State as well. You've got Minnesota there. I would have Minnesota ranked. Kansas, Syracuse, who's 3-0. So both Kansas and Syracuse, a little surprising. LSU, I would not rank LSU. And then Wisconsin did get 4 votes. So that is the official top 25. I think the biggest story, you would say, Washington entering at number 18. And then also you've got Penn State and Oregon making major moves. Penn State sitting at number 14. And you've got Oregon at number 15. And then with Oregon crushing BYU, you've got the Georgia stranglehold now over the number 1 overall ranking, with Alabama and Ohio State pretty far back, kind of vying for number 2 right now, with Michigan, I would say, as the clear 4. And then, honestly, I would have Oklahoma over Clemson. I'm just not buying Clemson right now. I think they need a quarterback change. I think they need to start the true freshman. We've seen Dabo Swinney do it before. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description.